we present to you the final Decoding Race Talk back here at my home, New York City. And I will now introduce Roland Martin, who has been an amazing friend to me for more than 10 years. He's an award-winning journalist, an all-around amazing television, radio personality. He's the current host of News One, now of TV One, and just fantastic. He was the first moderator for Decoding Race, and he's going to give us a grand closing. So join us, Roland. Thank you.
All right, folks, what's up? I'm on now? All right, cool. So how are we doing? Okay, I break rules. I'm not going to be sitting down, so let me move this over here. All right, so everybody's good? All right, then. So they gave me a list of questions to ask. I don't know why they did that. So whoever stayed up to write those questions, cut somebody out because I'm not going to read them. You wasted your time. We're going to have a great conversation. Just want to bring up our panelists right now, so let's get this thing going. So y'all like, he really did say he was going to do that. I tell you, Lovey, come on up, Lovey. Thank you for dressing up for the panel. Appreciate that. We appreciate that. Yes. Looking mighty dressy, of course. New York Times best-selling author, speaker, digital strategist. Of course, she deals at the intersection of comedy, technology, and activism. Of course, we just call her Lovey. You got a last name? Like Cher Madonna?
Ajayi.
Okay, gotcha. All right, cool. All right, just checking. All right, give it up for Lovey. Ajayi. Vint Cerf, Vint, where are you, Vint? Come on up.
Right here.
He dressed the hell up. Vint with a three-piece. All right. Vice President, Chief Internet Evangelist for Google. Of course, contributes to global policy development and continued spread of the Internet as well. Give it up for Vint.
Thank you.
Paola Mendoz, Chief Co-Director of Partnerships and Artistic Director for the Women's March in Washington. She's done documentaries like Free Like the Birds, Autumn's Eyes, Latoma, Still Standing. Wow, that's mighty environmental of you. Free Like the Birds, Autumn's Eyes. What's next? Winter Solstice? What's next? All right, cool. All right, so give it up for Paola, please. All right, where's Eddie Wong? Eddie, where are you? Eddie, come on up. All in the back, hanging out. He's a lawyer turned clothing designer, restaurateur, TV host, and author. Guess you was bored with the law, huh?
How are you?
Of course. Of course, he's a restaurant in New York City's East Village. He also is the author of the New York Times best-selling memoir, Fresh Off the Boat, host of his own show on Viceland. Cool. That's our panel. All right, so anytime we have these conversations, folks always say it's a conversation about race, and I never understand what people really mean by that. And so anybody can jump in. I'm not going to direct it to anybody at all. What should folks get out of these discussions, out of these conversations? What should they get? Go. Don't need to raise your hand.
First thing I would say is that what you want is to get comfortable with candor. That's probably the most valuable lesson that you could possibly take away, is it's okay to have candid discussions about hard topics, not only here in Google, but outside as well.
I think it's important with race discussion to acknowledge that it's a social construct. Do you know what I mean? Like, race is a social construct, and I think like an excellent starting point for any conversation about race is to acknowledge that it's a social construct, that we carry pretty much the same genetic DNA amongst all of us, and that a lot of the things people have told us about race are entirely fabricated.
That's fair.
Yeah, go ahead. So social constructs are, sometimes we want to use that as an excuse to not give something the weight that it should have. Money is also a social construct. Language is a social construct, but it's as real as the fact that the sky is blue, because how we behave around race means the social construct has real life consequences. So I don't want people to be thinking just because it's social and that we just created it. We created most things, this chair, Christmas, but we give each other gifts. Like, Santa is not real.
But he's not?
But the thing is with race is that we have so many people have been promoting or perpetuating the idea that there is some genetic foundation to race. Like, I mean, I'm sure you remember that Sports Illustrated article from like 25 years ago saying that like black athletes had like a different ligament or a different hamstring, you know, and like trying to give credence to race with a genetic foundation. And I think it's important to like kind of dispel a lot of those myths when having this conversation. It's a starting point. Like of course, social constructs have the value that you give it, but I think, do you feel like at times with race that people have tried to create a narrative that it is like, it's destiny, or that sometimes the way people act is predetermined by the universe or somebody else, you know?
I think also with regards to what people should be talking about with regards to race today, I want people to recognize that where we are politically in this country today is, in my mind, because of our lack of ability to speak about race. To see where the president is and the policies that he's implementing now, in my mind, are surrounded and based in the idea of white supremacy. And so I think and even that word, people, when you start saying that word, people get very uncomfortable. And I think, as you were saying, that we have to lean into that quote-unquote uncomfortability, those courageous discussions, those daring discussions to move forward in order to get to a more honest and sincere place.
Well, I think when we talk about this issue, I think for so many people, they're wholly ignorant of American history. And so that's also part of the problem. When you begin to confront the issue of race and you begin to understand economically, understand socially and culturally, as you begin to talk to folks, you start throwing out things that happened in, look, 2 years from now we'll be commemorating the 400th anniversary of the first folks of African descent to come to the United States in 1619. You explain to people 244 years of slavery, almost 100 years of Jim Crow. You even mentioned Reconstruction. And I'm not talking about, the low information Trump voters. I was at an event after the election in D.C., so all these really smart people, there are probably about 5 black people in the room, about 4 Latinos in the room, I think there were a couple of Asians, everybody else is white. And I asked the question, how many of you know about Reconstruction? Literally 3 hands went up. 3. And
doesn't that happen after surgery or something?
Huh? It was, they all had lobotomies. I don't know what was going on. and so even when I threw out the question of same-sex marriage, equal protection clause, 14th Amendment, I'm like, that was a Reconstruction Amendment. They had no idea. And so when you're trying to even have a conversation as to how we got to this point, and folks have no idea about history, I think that also is a contributing factor as to why people are so scared, because frankly, they don't know jack, even with their wonderful degrees.
So can I just make an observation that something that you said I think is very important. It's this social construct notion applies not only to race, but it applies to all kinds of different groupings. You can group people by all kinds of. I'm the token old fart, for example, up here. So the point I want to make is that the same tensions can arise out of various groupings, not just about race. The value of having the racial discussion today, anyway, is that it will apply to all those other groupings as well. So there's a depth of knowledge which is missing, not only about factual history with regard to race, but about other factual history with regard to other groupings, whether it's economic or, in my case, I'm hearing impaired, for example, and so I fall into a minority category in that particular grouping. So anyway, I just think that the lessons that we can learn from these conversations are broadly applicable to a wide range of different kinds of prejudice.
One of the reasons why I think this is important is because, and I've been saying this since 2009, that we are about to embark on what I call a 30-year war.
Holy moly.
And that is, and it's real, not the next election, but 30 years, because by 2044, no one group will be the dominant majority in this country. And once you start peeling back the layers of why people feel the way they feel today, you cannot help but get to this defining issue of race. So I'll throw this out to you. So when the study was done last year, the question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America for the next 10 years economically? African Americans, lowest wealth in America, highest optimism, 58%. Latinos, second lowest wealth, second highest optimism.
Interesting.
Whites in America, highest wealth, lowest optimism.
That's because they know they're losing their power. So it makes sense. When you are the person at the top, you're the person everyone's gunning for. So you know you have nowhere to go but down. I'd be sad too. But but it's about time. Like it's one of the that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We have high optimism because we're like, we can only go up. So
It can't get any worse.
it can't
right?
get any
You're
worse. So
right.
I'm like, I have nothing but good things coming because if it got any worse, geez, I just not be here.
But the reason I'm putting that out there because whenever there are these discussions on television, radio, and print, they literally skip right over that and don't then ask the second question, why? Because now the why question then informs where we stand today. The reaction to Trump running, the reaction to other candidates, what buttons are being pushed. And so when the immigration button is being pushed, they're really pushing a different button. When you have the whole issue of globalism, that's another button being pushed. No one talks about how technology has changed the game, how automation has wiped out significant numbers of jobs. Oh, no. Send those folks back to Mexico. That's why we don't have our jobs. Those are buttons being pushed. I just think that we have to go much deeper when we start talking about why people are responding the way they respond politically.
But also, immigration is a boon to the economy. It always has. If you study immigration patterns, like even like Buffalo, New York, right, did not have an increase in population since I believe the 1950s. In the last few years, it has the most. It's like the fourth largest growing city in America is Buffalo, New York, and a lot of it is immigrants coming from Africa and the Middle East creating businesses. And you look at like I believe it's Deerfield, Michigan. That's like a very strong Middle Eastern community. Immigrants coming to America, they create businesses, they become customers, they become landowners, and it's a boon to the country.
But the history those show those. When you have economic anxieties, there always is a tendency, I need to blame somebody.
And that's a social construct. That is a narrative that white people who are afraid of the dispossession of their country, they create that narrative that it's Mexicans taking jobs, it's immigrants taking jobs. And immigrants fill jobs that normal second, third generation Americans, they don't want to take. They don't need to take. This is the new workforce coming in, whether it's building the railroads, Reconstruction, the Panama Canal, the gold rush. It was always immigrants coming in and filling these jobs.
So could I just make an observation about this? Where this entire country is nothing but immigrants.
Vint, you're on the panel for observations. You don't have to tell us keep doing it. You can't say I want to make an observation.
I agree with you.
I got you. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make that observation that this entire country is nothing but immigrants. That's where we all came from. In fact, we displaced the folks who were here before.
Yeah,
which is another big issue.
Before there were Mexicans, before there was
Irish, before it was Chinese, before it was
Italian
Japanese.
or Irish or Jewish people were treated the way that a lot of us are treated now. Maybe not as badly, right? But like, there was always another. There was always a new immigration group. There was always another.
So the reality is, just off that point, I think that from the 2008 economic collapse, cities that had the most immigration population were the ones that actually rebounded economically better than other cities. And our reality here is where we are today is to be an immigrant. The existence of an immigrant really at this moment in time is to resist. My existence as an immigrant born in Colombia here in the United States for the majority of my life is one of resistance because again the political structure, power vacuum that we're in and to then on top of that, the idea of undocumented immigrants is even, we see what was going on yesterday in Texas with SB4 and the protests that were there, and that there was actual fights between state representatives on the floor, and they were threatening, one was threatening to shoot another one. Yeah. That he said that he called ICE on protesters, and so that is a political climate where we are, and I truly believe that we're there because actually we are unable to communicate with one another. We are unable to reach across the aisle, whatever that aisle is, and see what is happening with someone that thinks differently. Now, having a conversation obviously is not, I'm not saying to have a conversation is allowing for oppression and for oppressive thoughts to be legitimized, but to actually just sit down with someone and say, let's break down the facts. Let's break down the history of this country and talk about immigration and talk about race and see where we are and see where we've been, and so where are we going to go and how are we going to break the cycle? But we're not doing that at
Except
this moment.
when you're defining things by fake news. But you mentioned just something there when you said resist. So the question I have, okay, resist is one thing, to get what is another. So I can look at Montgomery Improvement Association taking place December 1st after Emmett Till is killed, and then I see this move in the Black freedom movement, this quest for freedom. But resist is one thing. To get what? See that, because that's vital.
Yes.
A lot of people, you can resist, then it's okay. I've resisted. But what the hell am I trying to get with my resistance?
Yeah, you know, I had a women's studies professor in college break it down for me, Dr. Hen. She said, you know, what I want in this world is the same opportunity for the same job, for the same pay, for the same work. And I was like, that makes some sense. And in terms of resistance, the thing I always think about resisting is Americans have to resist this idea that the country belongs to one dominant cultural group. It doesn't belong to one dominant cultural group. The country belongs to this idea that there can be a land in this world founded on equality, freedom of expression, and multiculturalism.
But stop
That
right
is the
there.
idea
But stop.
that
But I got to
people
stop you right there, though. You said you said a nation founded on equality.
The idea.
But
idea.
no.
But it wasn't. But it wasn't.
But even that idea was a lie.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Because if you were
Slavery.
not a white male landowner, the country was not founded
That's
for
why
you.
I say it's an idea, not a fact. You know what I mean? It's been
Right.
sold around the world as this idea.
Right.
That's our cultural soft power, is that we've exported this
Actually,
idea.
it's an aspiration, and which
lifestyle.
evolved.
I don't even think that's the thing though. I don't even think America aspires for equality. That's the thing. Like this country plays the global captain save a planet, runs through and being like, there's no democracy here. We're gonna bomb your place. Meanwhile, in our own country, what's happening is, I think America, back to one of your points, one of the reasons why we can't move forward is because America does not do a good job of looking itself in the mirror and being like, oh, okay, I see what's coming back at me. It's playing this global leader has this very high moral stance elsewhere, but what's happening in the country is just not. It's the same things we're bombing people for happening here.
Well, you're right. I think if you read Stephen Kinder's book Overthrow, if you want to look at what Russia did to us in the last election,
We've done.
hell, we did that.
did
Going
that.
back to Mossadegh in Iran in 1954.
We did that to all Latin America.
We pretty much perfected the art
Exactly.
of jacking up a country
Yes.
with fake
very
news.
much
Yes.
so.
No, seriously.
Fact.
You know,
It's true.
But the reason I want to say on this whole idea in terms of this ideal, because as we're talking about moving discussions forward, at trying to figure it out, I think we have to deal with that, because if you look at the income inequality now, if you look at the how much wealth is being held in so few hands, it is literally a 21st century version of when this country was created.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally in the exact same spot in terms of a handful of people with wealth determining the future direction of the country. And so I go back to this notion of resist. We are resisting to do what?
Well,
To
presumably,
get what?
presumably a more equal treatment for everyone, more equal opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, I think we're resisting. We're resisting for two things. That in this immediate moment, we're resisting to protect our communities, and all of our communities are under attack in various forms. And then I would also say that we're resisting for freedom. Like we're resisting for freedom of everything. And it's something to strive for. Will we get there? Not in my lifetime. I don't know when we'll get there. I know, right? Sorry to break it to you.
Here's why
I think it's the two things. Is the equal protection of the laws that has never been present.
Yeah.
And then the equal opportunity, because I don't think anybody here or listening or on the stage wants anything given to them. You know what I mean? I just want the same opportunity.
Like James Brown said, open door, I'll get it myself.
You know,
Exactly.
I would want something given to me. Yes, because this country has been people of color who've been doing all the work, so things have been given to white people. It's time for us to be given some things too. And I think the guilt that comes with us, we work so hard that sometimes when we do get something given to us, we're like, did I deserve it? Yeah. Yes. They've been getting this for free for 400 years. It's time for us to get some things for free too and not feel the guilt.
I want to go back to, you talk about equality and equal protection clause, equality. A lot of people love quoting Dr. King, and one of the things they don't realize is that he rarely ever used the word equality.
That's interesting.
He typically said freedom. He wanted freedom. You said that earlier, Eddie, that is, the moment a child is born, even before that, you want the mother to have the same prenatal care as somebody else.
Yeah.
But you want freedom. Freedom to drive down the street and not get pulled over. Freedom to not be not have somebody call ICE because you look Latino and they think you're also an illegal immigrant. That to me, I think as we're moving forward, I look at word usage. I think that's a more powerful word, because when you hear the so-called patriots, the founding fathers, they believed in freedom. See, I don't want equality. Equality means you got to pass another law to give it to me. No, I want what you got without a law. That's freedom.
So could I make a suggestion to you? When we look at the Constitution and we look at the Bill of Rights and you see the First Amendment that speaks about freedom of expression, freedom to assemble, freedom of access.
Not equality of expression.
No,
freedom.
Yes, I agree with you. But I wanted to emphasize something that you didn't mention, and that's another notion of freedom from harm, which is not in our Bill of Rights, but it should be. That's the one thing that we are willing to give up, a certain amount of freedom in exchange for safety. And that's part of the social contract.
Yeah.
This is a very tricky concept, but it's one that we have to embrace, because without that, in theory, my freedom of action should stop about 1 centimeter from your nose.
Actually, should stop in that chair. If you get your ass out that chair, it's going to be a problem.
But that's actually the more conservative interpretation of Locke. He has the more liberal interpretation of Locke in the social contract, which is that it's up to the centimeter of your nose. It's that you can express your freedom to the extent that it does not impose on someone else's unlimited freedom.
Yeah.
And so I think as a society, it's like boxing. It's about mastering your distance.
So I'll throw this out. So here we have massive changes when I look at what young folks are doing today, which is not unlike any other areas of history. I can think back to SNCC, a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, 1960s, meeting at Shaw University, and what they did, how they drove the Black Freedom Movement.
SDS.
But here's what's very interesting to me, is that when you begin to look at polling data, when you look at white millennials who believe today that racism against whites is just as significant as it is against African Americans, to your point about it being a construct, we have, I believe, sold ourselves this false notion that, but kids, they all listen to hip hop, it's all good.
It's the
Eddie,
least
you find it
racist.
hilarious, I can tell.
I find it hilarious because I remember growing up, like, I actually, I felt a lot of solidarity. I found a lot of connectivity to hip-hop music. It was the music that made me feel less alone and less alien because I was the only Chinese kid in school, But I knew that a lot of the other kids listening to it, that it was a phase for them. It was a costume. Like, they come back from summer and it's like, I'm wearing, FUBU and Fat Farm now. But then I knew, like, next summer they'd be wearing Abercrombie and Fitch,
Yeah.
And by the time people went to college, they just dropped it. A lot of people dropped it. But then, hip-hop became a mainstream culture. But I think that says more about this art form that Black communities created, the power of hip-hop and how undeniable it is. It's the most powerful movement of the last 30 years.
What I'm trying to say is that we can't live on this idea that just because there are folks today who are 24, 25, 26, that somehow everything is just going to change because they live in a much more diverse world than their parents. We actually still take on the identity and the views of our parents. How
it becomes more insidious when you don't think there's an actual threat. Right? And so, I think the ABC show is that Fresh Off the Boat is a real good example of, like, they'll use your yellow faces and tell white stories,
So at moving forward, how do we be mindful of that to ensure we don't fall into the trap of just assuming, it's all good?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
Well, we shouldn't assume. So part of the thing is we always assume people are at the same place we are, an understanding and knowledge and whatever our beliefs are, and that's completely wrong. Everyone got shocked November 9th being like, oh God, I thought everybody I knew was voting this way. No, that assumption is wrong, which is why the conversation needs to happen in rooms that are difficult or not. Like, we need to talk about white privilege, and the fact that most people don't even know what white privilege means. They just think it means that I got things handed to me all my life. Like, these kids who are 24, 25 are still doing blackface parties. Yeah. And then we want to sit and be like, they're the least racist generation. No, they're not. They're being raised by racists, so they're going to be racist too. It doesn't matter if they're around black people all day. If their mom and your dad is beating your head, that this is exactly how white supremacy and the idea of genetic supremacy, and that is going to be what they carry with them. So we have to bring it to them.
So does it behoove us to quickly call someone or something racist? Here's why I'm putting that out there before you answer. So here's what happens. We have these conversations today. An event happens, let's say blackface. All of a sudden, it goes, that's racist? No, it's not. So the conversation then is no longer about blackface. The conversation is now, you're racist, you're not a racist.
Yeah, self-preservation.
The argument that I make, that there's a whole lot of stuff in between racist and non-racist. I mean, I've rarely called someone a racist because I want to stay focused on exactly what happened as opposed to that conversation because it will quickly shift.
Yeah, for me, if I'm talking to somebody about race or I feel like maybe something is racist, I try to establish with them in the conversation, I don't want anything for you. I don't want anything from you. I want this for you. Do you know what I mean? I want you to have this understanding. Like, so everything I'm telling you is not for me to report you or to like complain about you or ruin your career. Like, I'm here for you to get closer to the truth. You know what I mean?
Paola, we'll go to you. So for instance, same thing happened when it came to the Women's March. I've been highly critical of the National Organization for Women for a long time because it should have been the National Organization for White Women. And then so when a 14-year-old girl in McKinney had her face slammed to the ground, now said nothing. And I put them on blast, and ever since then, every time something happened with a black girl, they put that statement out in about 20 minutes. But the point being, if you said, now you're racist, the reaction from these white liberal women, oh my God, I'm not racist. No, but you're silent.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I was going to talk about, is the idea and the power of language or lack of language. So I work in the immigration space, specifically in the undocumented space, and this is a new territory for most people. So people don't necessarily know the language. So you will hear people say illegal as opposed to undocumented. And I've kind of perfected the way in which to correct someone in a non-confrontational, productive way so that they actually understand why they shouldn't use that language. I don't call people out publicly, or if I do, it's a very safe space in which to do it in. And I think that goes to your question, because at the end of the day, what's important to me in that circumstance in particular is to educate, empower, and create a conversation. And when we are attacking people right away, then that ability to have a conversation is unattainable. But also keeping in mind that there are just some people that I will not engage a conversation with, and those are just the outliers that we don't talk to or engage with. And with regards to the Women's March, I think one of the things that we're most proud of is that we were able to push the needle forward within the women's movement to talk about this idea of feminism being for white women, and really having white women in particular understand why feminism had become so selectively white. And within the organization, we had numerous conversations where we were crying, upset, laughing, and these were strangers. These were 25 women, 30 women that came together, didn't really know one another, to have these discussions. And the people that were really having the most emotionally difficult discussions were the white women, because they were being confronted in a space where they were actually equal in numbers of women of color and white women. They were not the majority, and so I always
And they thought everything was good.
Oh yeah, they didn't know. They honestly didn't know, and so you don't know what you don't know. So that's where you start the conversation. And it's exhausting and tiring and emotionally draining, but it's one conversation that each individual can choose to take on. So my point is that, again, it goes back to this idea of conversations, of how do you call someone out in a way that's productive and where they don't get defensive.
Colin.
So
exactly,
I
you
put a
call
pin
them
in it.
in.
So let me do this here. So how many folks in the room have heard of Title IX?
Oh, yeah.
How many of you believe that Title IX was about sports?
No, it was about gender.
No. It was about the way it has been positioned.
It's about sports.
That it's about sports and gender. But if you actually go back, Title IX was created to specifically open up the professional schools for women. Doctors, lawyers, dentists. Now, let me ask this question. Who knows where Title IX even comes from? Precisely, the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So, Title IX gets passed, 72, gets passed. You see an explosion of women become doctors, dentists, lawyers, engineers in professional schools, largely white women, because still opportunities were being closed for black women. So, all of these women, talking about a lot of those women in the room, who then go into corporate America, who get all these particular jobs, guess what? They were able to advance because black folks marched to get the 64 Civil Rights Act passed.
Exactly.
Now, when you throw that out, and I've done it in speeches, white women in the room look at me like, oh my God, what the hell is he talking about? To Eddie's point, if you're talking about if you are Chinese or Korean or Japanese and you appreciate voting in your native tongue in the ballot, thank black people in the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I go back to the Reconstruction Amendment, Equal Protection Clause, 14th Amendment, that came out after slavery. The point I'm making is, even also if you're disabled, American Disabilities Act, provision of 64 Civil Rights Act. All of these laws that have been changed were a result of the Black Freedom Movement. And when you throw that out there, people then go, oh, where are you going? Which allows me to go into the next part, that is when you look at Black Lives Matter. And then these efforts that are happening today. These laws that are being, these changes are being forced not to just benefit black folks, but again, like everything else I just said, to benefit every other American. How do we get that through folks' head that this just ain't a black thing? A body camera could save your ass too.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, like, I didn't see Asian politicians. I didn't see that many Asian leaders. There was not any representation of us culturally besides Bruce Lee, you know?
Right.
And I read Hank Aaron's autobiography. I would read Thank You, Jackie Robinson. I listened to Charles Barkley, you know, like as much as he didn't want to be a role model, he was my role model, you know? And I read about the march. I read about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And I read I Have a Dream and compared it to Letter from Birmingham Jail. And I started to realize, I was like, black people have paved the way for anyone of difference in America. And I think for me, I grew up just always wanting solidarity because I could see strength in solidarity and I could see how I was benefiting from the work of black Americans. And going to the Women's March, you know, I went to the Women's March. It was one of the most incredible things I've seen. And once I saw Trump going at women, I was like, we're actually going to make some progress here because everybody has a mother. Everybody has been kind of slandered by this man now. And this is now everybody's fight and everybody has to join in. And then also, I'm sorry, I haven't finished the point. Then the Women's March became this platform and this canvas that everyone could bring their issues and their stories to. And I saw tons of Black Lives posters. And, you know, it was a place where everyone had a place to come have a voice and stand up for something. And the women at the march really, I think, carried the torch and carried a lot of people's issues for them that day.
Yet 53% of white women voted for Trump. Yet people then, after the election, said, whoa, I was voting for this. I totally ignored this. Like all the people right now who are now crying, please don't take my health care. Now you're trying to wake up. So as we're moving forward with all these different movements that are going on.
I'll take them whenever they want to wake up, though. You know what I mean? Like,
I sat out the Women's March, and it was a personal decision to do that because I was like, you know what? Yes, black people are always showing up. Honestly, on this day, I don't want to. So I actually sat home and I didn't go, but I was like, props to everybody who went, and I really respected the significance of the event and how massive it was. I mean, biggest protest ever. Okay, so that was epic. But the fatigue that comes with always showing up for people who never show up for you. On that day, I was not feeling the need to be uniting with anybody. I was like, I'll unite with y'all afterwards. But today, what happens when black people do decide to all sit out one day? If we don't show up, like how far would we be? How far would women be? Even though we usually get the brunt of, oh my God, the Black Lives Matter people are protesting. They should like stopping traffic. Meanwhile, not realizing that like your kids are benefiting from the fact that these people are stopping traffic. So, I mean, I think it's really important for people to acknowledge that, is the fact that Black Americans do not get enough credit for the amount of work that they've put on the... I was born in Nigeria, so I'm also an immigrant in that I didn't come here until I was 9. And Africans come here and get really successful, but we also have to acknowledge the reason we're able to do that is because when we come here, all the work that Black Americans have done allow us to come here and then become doctors in 3 years and 4 years, and then be able to be like in the 10%, which is amazing. So I just wanted to take this moment to say, like, Black Americans, y'all are superheroes. You don't get told that enough, and history doesn't give you enough credit, but it should.
And to that point, and this is something that I like to say publicly as often as I can, that the Women's March was successful as it was because we were literally on the backs of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter had been training the American people for 2-3 years previous to the women's movement to go out to the streets, to protest, to shut things down. And it was when the perfect event of Donald Trump and everything that he had done to women, and an event was posted on Facebook that we had the perfect energy, synergy, whatever you want to call it, to get millions of people out to the street. But I don't think that we would have had that had Black Lives Matter not been happening for 3 years previous to that. And also what you're talking about, I think at the end of the day, is something that is organizing 101. When we put the most marginalized people at the center of the movement, and we work towards them, and we realize that our freedom is bound to their freedom, that's the work that needs to get done. So when we're here in this space and we're talking about race, the reason race is important and the reason why we need to be uncomfortable and the reason why we need to have these daring discussions is because when we have them, we will all start to become free. We will all get closer to that place that we're striving for. And so I think that's why Google is having this conversation, because they are obviously, you all are obviously at the forefront of where we need to go. And that is why it's important to, whether if you're white, if you're Black, if you're Latino, if you're undocumented, if you're gay, if you're straight, if you're disabled, whatever it is, like that is the importance and the power of the conversation.
So, but how we do with intersectionality?
I really want to respond to what she said, because I really understand your frustration, and like you don't need me to say it, but I think it's very, very fair that some people sat out the Women's March because it's like the sword and the stone. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, Black Lives Matter have been pulling on this sword and the stone, doing all the work, pushing it forward, trying to open America's eyes. And a lot of people are just like, why are you talking about Black Lives Matter? Treating it almost like a nuisance. Do you know what I mean? Treating Colin Kaepernick like he was a nuisance, when in fact that man sacrificed his career to make a statement and awaken America. And it has to be frustrating from a Black perspective to see that when white women were attacked, that then the sword was taken out of the stone. You know,
that's called being Black in America.
No,
I'm just, I mean,
even a Chinaman can understand.
I mean, we're just like, you know.
I would like to say this too.
I mean, you got the New York Giants owner who today's newspaper.
But I'll say
we got all these letters from Giants fans saying we're going to boycott if you sign Kaepernick, but they ain't said a damn thing when they had a kicker who was beating the hell out of his wife.
And the other thing too is I would say is like, I totally get the frustration, but sometimes I feel like as a minority or a person of color, however we're supposed to be identified these days, it's like, unfortunately, we may not have the privilege of sitting out.
No. Here's how I see her sitting out. It's sort of like if we're in a tug of war, it's like, okay, I'm gonna take a rest. I'm gonna take a rest. I need y'all to pull. Basically, it was like, we're in a tug of war. I'm gonna take a breather. I need y'all to pull.
That's it.
I'm gonna step out. And I'm gonna get back in.
But give me 5 minutes.
It's
your turn.
But I want to go to Vint though, because I want to do this intersectionality piece because what's interesting when you talk about this intersection of different issues. I think about, and again, I brought the 14th Amendment again, Equal Protection Clause. The Supreme Court, when they decided same-sex marriage, was based upon that. But what was interesting is BYP 100 had done a
shout out
where they said, look, okay, y'all get same-sex marriage, that ain't what we concerned about. And it was interesting because I had Black gay folks who were saying, that ain't number one on our list. And I've had to deal with African Americans, same in talking to Jose Antonio Vargas, Asians, Latinos who are gay, who are in this movement saying, hold up, now how are we all gay, but then we're still fighting marginalization within the LGBT movement, an equality movement that practices inequality. So as we begin to move forward, I think we're going to see even more of those battles where all of a sudden it's not as clear as black, Asian, Latino, women. It's going to be things crossing.
It's going to look there are dozens, if not more, categories in which everyone fits, and a lot of those categories will put you into a minority. And so it seems to me absolutely clear that everything that you were saying with regard to people of color and their sense of oppression and unfairness will show up in all of those other instances as well. The net result of all that is that if we've got to get Americans to understand and believe that no one is free until we all are.
Yes.
That's actually
man
that's a
invented the internet.
BYP 100 mantra. That's a mantra that BYP 100 says. Like, none of us are free until we're all free. And understanding back to what you said, like, our freedom is bound to somebody else's freedom is what will make you get out of bed in the morning when it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Exactly.
Right? But the thing is, like, most Americans don't get out of bed until it has something to do with them. Like, they're not getting out to march until, oh, he said something about white women. Now I have to see. Where were you for the last 2 years? So it's a matter of us seeing ourselves in other people's struggles and understanding that if that person has a harder time living a free life, I will too in some way. It's going to show up in some way in my life. And that means their struggle is my struggle. That means their fight has to be my fight. Until we do that, nothing's going to happen.
That's right.
About 5 to 8 more minutes before our panel,
So,
we're going to go to questions
I-
from the audience. And so please let me know.
Mr. Moderator,
Hold on 1 second. I'm doing some housekeeping. So let me know when the questions are up here, okay? Go right ahead.
yeah. So I was going to make one other psychological observation. People see behaviors that they don't like, and they'll say, I don't like them, for whatever reason. But what they don't do is what you were suggesting earlier, which is to dig deeper to find out what is the reason for that behavior? What are the incentives that drive that behavior? And until we understand what the incentives are, we won't be able to change the behavior, because just complaining about it doesn't work. You have to figure out how to change the incentives. And that's probably the most fundamental question that we have to wrestle with. How do we change the incentives for the behaviors that we don't like?
And when we say incentives, I mean, look, at the end how many folks have been to Washington, D.C. and have visited or been by the White House?
Lately?
Well, I live there.
In your whole
so-
life. In your whole life.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right, yes.
Now, I'll ask this question. There's only one federal agency that shares a lawn with the White House. They can literally play flag football on the lawn. Which agency?
Treasure.
No, this
Treasury.
Treasury. Oh, because
That's it.
that's right. Yeah.
To understand
Makes
America,
sense.
power, money.
Yeah.
Money, power. That's the only one that shares a lawn with the White. You can literally go 100 steps out of the side of the Treasury Department to be in the East Wing of in the East Wing of the White House. So when you talk about incentives, then I think about Al Newhart when he was the CEO of Gannett, a founder of USA Today. He said, here's a guy grew up in South Dakota, didn't see many black people, but he said, we're going to be the leading company when it comes to diversity. And he then said, I'm going to attach our diversity goals to your bonuses. And then he said, if you don't like it, you can leave the company. And there were people who left, and he said, see ya, because they wouldn't do it.
Right.
And so when Gannett became the leader in the industry with diversity, it caused Knight Ridder to go, damn, we better get our act together. It literally caused a ripple effect. The entire media industry said, we better go start recruiting some folks because Gannett's going to get all of the great minority talent. That changed the game.
Interesting.
The president of FX, same thing. They did a study in FX Network, and he said, how is it that 88% or whatever of our movies are showrunners are white males? And he sent a single email out saying this should not be the case. 6 months later, it was flipped to nearly half of their shows were people of color.
I mean, look at.
But that was a leader.
Look at what Scandal did for
That was leadership.
television. I mean, when Scandal started, the last black lead for a primetime show drama was Diane Carroll in 1974. So when Scandal became successful, literally all the TV networks was like, oh, it can be profitable for a black woman to lead a show. Then it actually became a thing that all the networks were doing. It is the money that's tied to it and changing the incentive. So like now in publishing, for a long time they were like, oh, black people don't read books, so we're not gonna really give you guys a lot of book deals. And they started giving us book deals, and they realized we can hit New York Times bestseller list. Oh, somebody else can get a book deal now. It's always tied to the money, always.
Questions? Y'all ready?
Was that a mic drop? Was that a mic drop? Like,
I said power and money, money power. All right, let's roll.
We don't have questions on the door yet, but we'll
Really?
take 5 questions on the mic.
Really? You don't have a question? All right. Who got a question?
Here we go. We can see it here.
Okay, we got a microphone. Man, come on. Who got a question? Really? Nobody here has a question?
there's
Wait, no, it's right here.
I got it.
We've got the question here.
Here we go. Microphone works. Step on up and light. Come on. It's going to be like the old Phil Donahue show.
No, Roland, we got
Let me
a
explain to you who Phil
question.
Donahue is. Okay, you know who Phil Donahue is. I see the gray hair. Yes, you did. What's your name? What's your question?
My name's Jason, and you said that it's hard to challenge someone and just call them a racist. So having these conversations maybe more around, as Eddie suggested, around a specific reaction somebody had or thing they said, what are some good ideas for how to do that? I've got a big family. I need to do a lot of education.
Oh, he's trying to survive
Thanksgiving.
and Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to take that?
I've had that question sent to me a lot of times because I've challenged my white readers to not be silent in the face of just problematic things happening in their, like, because if you're silent as it's happening, you're giving it air. So my suggestion is to just really point it out. So you're at dinner, and let's say your uncle makes that racist joke, you should be like, hey, yeah, that's not okay. Simply even saying that's not okay is better than you just being like, oh, here he goes. Because you let him know that when you're in the room, he has less space for that. He would do it less in your presence, at the minimum, if nothing else.
True.
Start there.
Eddie?
Yeah, you know, when I was younger, I used to turn in these essays, and they were like fiery, angry, analytical essays. And my teacher, I had a professor, Dr. Jones, asked me, she said, why is it that you use this language? Why is it that you just beat the reader over the head over and over? And I said, because I'm right. And she said, okay, fair, I agree with you.
Damn, you too, huh?
Yeah, and she said, I agree with you that you're right. You have proven it over the course of these paragraphs. But, like, the purpose of writing is to communicate and to persuade. And she says, you should be a more results-based writer. And at first, I was upset. I didn't accept it. But over time, I realized just being right does not give you license to attack people with language. Also, being right, you don't get a medal for that. You know, like, you need the result. You need people to open their eyes. The purpose is to convey your feelings and for them to understand you. And I've noticed, at least in my own personal life, the more patient and generous and humble I am in front of someone that may have said something that I consider racist, I get more when I give. And it's such a hard thing to do. It's really hard.
That is labor intensive.
But it's also based upon really the situation in terms of where you are.
Well, I mean, I interviewed a guy from the alt-right, like in our DC episode of Wong's World.
White nationalists. That's what I call it. I don't call it the alt-right.
He was the director, founder of AmRan. And, from the beginning, I could have got hot and argued with him. I probably should have choked him, But I just kept, at least in my mind, giving and giving. And then, you know what? That fool walked himself into a hole.
Oh, every time.
Yeah.
Because they're not smart. No, they're not.
They're also hateful.
I had Richard Spencer for 32 minutes on my show. It was supposed to be 8 minutes.
You didn't punch him in the face like everybody else?
I said, I'm going to beat his ass for about 10 more minutes. Then another 10 minutes. And again, he looked crazy at the end. But I do believe the moment matters. Like, I don't like it when I'm in first class. I got my Texas A&M stuff on and say, you play football? Hell no. Did you? No, I mean, because really, I want you to ask first, that's where you went to school. Don't assume I played ball or I coached there. And so, depending upon how I feel, I might be nice about it and say, no. Or I might be very dismissive. Hell no. All this is the mood I'm in. What's your question? I got the mic. We good. Put your hands in your pocket.
Why?
I'm Christina, and I recently, well, first of all, thanks for being here, and thanks for this discussion and everything. I'm really glad that I work at a company where this is valued. I recently read a book called Homegoing, and it's one of the best books I've read ever, so if you haven't read it, you should. And it talks about, for anybody who hasn't read it, the story of one family, two sisters. One follows like her lineage for the last 400 years, going from the Gold Coast in Ghana to the United States and everything, basically living in slavery and then after slavery, blah, 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 blah. And you just, it was just a heartbreaking book to read. And while reading it, it was just like, there's, like, Black people just don't even have like they didn't have a chance ever, like with that kind of history, they're so far behind, there was so much institutional baggage, it just felt very heartbreaking. Fast forward to, well, not fast forward, but at the same time, I live in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn, 90% voted, against Trump, and, very democratic, very open, liberal community. And yet, you look at your schools in my neighborhood, and they are, frankly, like, they're sort of segregated,
They are segregated.
Yeah,
New York City has the most segregated schools in the country, and more so than the civil rights movement.
And the rates of incarceration, so you have this sort of dissonance that I'm so uncomfortable with, and I don't really know what to do with it, but I just thought, I don't really have a question, I'm just like, rates of incarceration.
Oh no, we got it.
And schools, and like, where are we, and is there hope?
Pointing out the dissonance is exactly the right thing to do. I think it's an extremely helpful thing to do, and now we all have homework to go read that book.
But it's also not accepting the silly notion that it's a Democratic or Republican thing.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Because, so when, what's the fool on CNN? I know,
Which
there's
one?
a lot of them. Jeffrey Lord. Okay, so when Jeffrey Lord is running his mouth, he's talking about, the Democrats created the KKK. And the problem I have is that too many people on CNN have no understanding of history, because it's very easy to shut Jeffrey Lord down. And you simply say, Jeffrey Lord, which president led the White Lily movement in the 1930s? And he would look at you like you were crazy. You would say Herbert Hoover. He was a Republican. See, so what happens is, as long as it becomes, if you're a Republican, you hate minorities, and if you're a Democrat, you love minorities, we lose sight of the fact that our schools come down to money. Mm-hmm. Democrats like money, Republicans like money. They like money in their own school districts. And so that's why I think where we fail. This is not, to change these systems is not a Democrat or Republican thing. Yeah. It's a human thing. Yep. Democrats can be just as idiotic and stupid when it comes to allocation of resources as Republicans. Yep. In many cases, Republicans have been actually more supportive of historically black colleges and universities in the White House than a Democrat. So again, don't fall for the political trap. The question is, where do you stand on the issue, regardless of your party?
And I think, just to take it a step further with regards to liberal, and I'll be fast since we have someone else, there's a school, I also live in that area in Fort Greene. A friend of mine, she sent her child to a charter school from all Fort Greene, Clinton Hill area. And the school, the parents actually advocated for the principal to take away African American History Month.
What?
They're liberals.
What school is this?
It's somewhere downtown. I don't know where it is.
Wow.
It's an elementary school.
And he's looking for it.
Exactly. That was my reaction.
Show me the school.
Exactly.
He's going right now.
It's liberals, educated, predominantly white community, and they talked to a black principal to say, please take away African American History Month, because that's just saying to our children that we're different. And we're not all different, we're equal. Right, so that is also not understanding what the importance and the purpose and the point of saying, actually, we're not all the same. We are different, and there's beauty in differences, and that is the important thing, not to make us all one. So I think, to your point, and to Roland's point, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican or liberal. It's really how you're analyzing and seeing the world, and checking inside to say, I don't understand this, and I don't understand this, like you're saying, and why? What can I do? Who do I talk to? Who do I expose myself to and my children to actually understand why African American history is important?
Also, it's important for white liberals not to feel like just because they're liberal, they're doing the work. Like, the fact that a whole neighborhood and community that considers itself liberal can tell a principal, take Black History Month away. Mm-hmm. Well, it comes down to the idea that, first of all, people always think bad guy, good guy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm liberal, I'm good. No, you're not good. You're part of this amazing system that is just, you're embedded in it, and you just being like, I'm liberal is not the solution. Yeah. Like, you have to do more than just be liberal.
If you read Dr. King's book, Chaos or Community, Where Do We Go From Here, which was his worst-selling book, written in '67, he said in the book, it didn't cost America much to allow us to go in the hotel, didn't cost them much to allow us to go in the parks, didn't cost America much to allow us to eat in restaurants. He said the real question now is, will America write that big check to fix the problem? And he said, even our white allies will not be with us because they believe you've gotten enough.
Yep.
So the point there is that's why, and just like there are some black people I am not riding with because they crazy.
Yes.
Just because, so the issue goes to where do you stand on stuff as opposed to what do you look like and what's your party affiliation. Right. All right, what's your question? Put your hand down. I got you.
Hi, I'm Samara, an Iranian American woman. Yes. So I think it's a follow-up to your question is what is that next? I think it's a cultural thing. Being born and raised here and being a terrorist growing up till current day and the immigration law and all that. I think it was always like, don't say anything from your parents. It's something culturally ingrained. Like don't push the boundaries, don't get yourself in trouble. Now being a mother of 2 kids, I'm like, no, we need to push the boundary. I just don't know what that is. Because I've always been told to step back.
Good one. Who wants it?
You've always been told to step back because you were not in the best position to push forward.
Yeah.
So the people who are in the good position to push forward should be the ones pushing forward for you. Because you right now, pushing forward is a threat to you and your livelihood. Meanwhile, white men are sitting up here not doing anything. They should be pushing forward for you. So your existence is resistance basically at this point.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, that people in power should be doing their jobs as our representatives and pushing things forward, but at least in my experience, I've noticed that like no one's gonna do anything for you but yourself, you know? Yeah. And I come from a community, Taiwanese, Chinese Americans, we're also told just be quiet, look at your feet when you're walking down the street, don't cause no trouble. I mean, every single movie has an Asian person with the same line, I don't want no trouble, you know what I mean? Like, that's been our community's standard line for like 30 years, I don't want no trouble, you know? Or you break your body, like we got a few lines, that's really it. But, you know,
What about that other one? Go ahead, make my day.
I feel sorry for your mother. But no, like, those are 3 lines, very known for delivering those in all manner of cultural products.
Hey, we used to get killed before the credits finished, I understand. I mean, the credits wasn't done. Damn, the brother's already dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
We saw that happen, we're like, we don't want no trouble.
But you made it through the movie, though.
Yeah, I made it through the movie, you know.
At least y'all made it.
But I will say is, and then
I actually want to counter your observation that no one will do anything unless you do it for yourself.
Okay, sure.
I think that's not true.
Okay, I'm gonna finish this
All right,
point,
go ahead.
and then you invented the internet, so you can shut me down whenever you want. You know, I would just say though that I actually.
If you want your email to continue working.
Yeah,
that's hard.
And no, so I was just saying is that I didn't see anyone else in my community speaking up, and I was like, I'm gonna try to do this at least for myself, for my family, and my brothers, and it goes on and on and on, and it's incredible the power that one person has if you just set your mind to it. I feel like you should engage and do something. You know?
Question, there have been reports today.
Wait a minute. Mr. Moderator.
I know, I got 5 minutes. I got to get to this question before they cuss me out, these tweets. There have been reports today Google thinks it's too expensive and labor intensive to investigate the DOJ claims that we systematically underpay women. If this is true, how can we advocate that, at least within the company, to ensure that we do pay our women and minorities equally?
There's nothing that's too expensive for Google.
Hold on, that's Vint.
Point of order, it's not the DOJ, it's the Department of Labor that is asking for the statistics.
Okay.
And apparently we have given them an enormous amount of statistical information. We even have data that shows that when we hire women, they get higher pay raises than the men do in order to adjust for the fact that they've been historically underpaid. So there's a lot of evidence that Google has done a great deal to even out these things. It's built in now to our algorithms for raises and things like that. It's now algorithmically built.
You got a snitch in your company, though.
Yeah.
Paola, go ahead.
Susanna out here snitching.
I think this is what I like to advocate, and this is what I do in my own personal life. I think we just need to share how much we make.
Word.
Women, you just need to go up and you need to ask your coworker, hey, how much do you make? This is what I make.
I would love for someone to ask for my tax returns. I'd be, well, let me show you.
We, as women and as people of color, need to share information because when we have information, we can then empower ourselves from a place of knowledge. And it's as simple as that. Break down that barrier and ask the question. And men, be upfront with your coworker, and you can go up to her, him, and too, and say, "Hey, I made this amount of money. How much?"
I would pull up to the club with my tax return if that was socially acceptable. You feel me?
Next question. I recently had a conversation with a friend who insisted racism, sexism is no longer a problem in America, and that America is the least racist country in the world. Parentheses.
Yeah.
It was a baffling and frustrating conversation, no doubt. Does the panel have suggestions for how to get people to rethink this misconception? One person, who wants to take it?
I'm probably stop being friends with them because I'm like, you're just so out of touch. Just
said
I
new
can't.
friends.
I mean, where do you go? Like, where do you go? So when you're having a discussion with somebody, right? The point is to have this middle ground. But when you're over here and the person's over here, how do you come to the middle with
Well,
that?
that's what you've been trying to do. And both of you have said that
Yeah,
you've
give
tried to
gifts.
find, what the trick was to get away from the racist discussion and get to something more specific. Because, in fact, whatever it was might not actually have been a racist issue at all. It might have been something else. But
This
finding
person said
something
it's no longer a
concrete.
problem.
Yeah.
This person
Yeah.
said racism and sexism is no longer a problem in
Yeah,
America, and
you
that
just
America is
can't
the least racist country. How do you talk
So-
to that
Yeah,
person?
when someone is like that out to lunch and out to sea, I'm
Yeah.
just like, please tell me how you got here.
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah,
tell me more.
yeah.
You know, like we were saying, I just want to hear more.
Just ask.
Again, I think in that situation, no matter how stupid and crazy they are, you still force them to say, okay, well, let's talk about the study that showed if you have a black sounding name, you have a 50% less likelihood of getting a return phone call for a job than if you were white and it's the exact same resume.
They will find excuses.
No, but here's the deal though. My experience in hitting people every day with questions, when you begin to hit folks with specific questions and data, it's hard to ignore. The problem, I think, in that case, is when you have general conversations.
Yeah.
Right.
No, when
And
you
then
hit them
what
with
do you do?
specifics, it's a little hard for them to wiggle out because they have to justify how that
Right.
forms with their opinion. Question.
So, on the panel earlier on, they talked about how there's like two ends of the spectrum, right? You have one person, that could be called a racist, and then another person who disagrees, and then the meat of the issue gets lost. But when I think about a lot of these things, there's a lot of facts that are hidden in history. And as you stood on the stage and you were reeling out lots of facts, I was just like, wow. But not a lot of people know that.
Because they didn't read.
Because they didn't read. And I didn't grow up in this country.
Niger?
Like Lurvy, I grew up in
I
Nigeria.
knew you're a Niger man. Yes.
You recognize that.
I saw my people. I'm sorry.
I came to the U.S. and, I took an African American culture class, and I was just amazed at a lot of things that are in history, but again, I'm lost to a lot of people.
Right, there's history, then there's his story.
Yeah.
Two different things.
True. And I know the writer, Ta-Nehisi Coates,
Yeah.
he wrote that magnificent essay. And again, so much facts in there that not a lot of people know. So how do you get a lot of those facts out there to people? Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and that's what we're trying to do. Because you can't force people to love.
I have an unfortunate observation to make about the American culture.
Thank you. Go.
The
We got
American
2 minutes.
The American culture tends to have amnesia. If you visit in Europe, there will be casual conversation in which the years 1400 and 1066 and 1622 and 1648 are regularly mentioned as if they were yesterday. In America, you can't remember what happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so we have really serious cultural problems remembering facts and history, and I don't know how to fix that.
Well, part of the problem is that we have not actually had real American history in our schools. No, that's why I said history and his story. No, that's real. And so there's so many things that have actually been left out. And so for me, I use my media platforms to do it every single day.
Yeah.
In terms of, I got hashtag Roland's Book Club. So people ask me, dude, how do you know all this sort of stuff? Like,
I read.
these are all the books that I've read. Then they're like, okay, man, I understand it now. And so, again, but it's also we also have to make history accessible and explain it in a way. You got to remember, newspapers historically have taught us right on a 5th grade level.
Yeah.
May sound crazy, but you're right on a 5th grade level. And so to understand, literally I was on the radio today and we were trying to talk about economics, and I said, okay, let me just walk you through. 1619 to 1863, 244 years of slavery. 2 years of the war, Then you had, of course, the end of the war, 1865 to 1877, 12 years of Reconstruction. Great Compromise of 1877 starts Jim Crow. That goes through almost 1970. If you use the death of King, April 4, 68, then let's say another 2 years. So if you say 1970 is the marker where black folks were technically fully free Americans, that's only 47.
But you mentioned
Only 47 years. And when people hear that, they go, whoa, hold up. That's it? Because then you say, yes, the first wave of black people in corporate America happened in the early 70s. The first African Americans on Wall Street, in terms of Morgan Stanley, those companies. Then the first African Americans in major Ivy League institutions. Now all of a sudden, then I say, I'll be 49 in November.
Wow.
Which means I was born into an America where I was not fully free. Which means I don't have any kids. My nieces and nephews are the first generation of African Americans born technically fully free. Wow. Now people go, damn, because they think slavery 1863, they totally ignore the fact that we literally were frozen out of economic systems through the 1960s and 1970. But again, it's getting people to break it down that way. Then they go, whoa, as opposed to just, oh, slavery ended this time. Because most people really, they just don't know. Even a whole lot of black people have no idea, no clue.
You mentioned Dr. King. You asked the question you asked the question about we have all these facts, yet it seems like people don't want to listen or give credence to these facts. And I think Dr. King's works, it really tells you the most and gives you the blueprint. Letter from Birmingham Jail is probably the most analytical essay that Dr. King wrote. It breaks things down systematically with facts, and it's written to intellectuals. But his most powerful speech...
Actually, it was written to white pastors in Birmingham.
Yes. Intellectuals, yes. So his most powerful speech, though, and the most persuasive speech, undeniably, is I Have a Dream. And that is a persuasive speech. And I think that all of us have to acknowledge it's not just enough to be right if we want the result that we desire. We have to be persuasive.
But don't just read the bottom 1/3 of the speech. First of all, it was never even called I Have a Dream speech. It was called Normalcy No More.
I understand this. You're talking to me like I don't know the facts.
No. I'm saying the other folks in the room. Here's why.
Come on, knowledge.
I'm throwing it out there because every year we replay the King's speech and we replay the I Have a Dream part. We don't talk about the top 2/3 where we talked about police brutality, economic inequality, bank of injustice, because I Have a Dream part is all nice and feeling.
But what does that tell you, Roland?
It makes him the patron saint of good times and nonviolence.
Right. So what has happened is we've turned King into a bobblehead.
Yes.
As opposed to a radical revolutionary that he was.
Exactly.
So the challenge to anybody in the room is don't leave here, just read the bottom part, start from the beginning, and then go, whoa, dude was slaying folks.
Of course,
and not
but
just holding
do you
hands.
think that he would be as productive and persuasive
and assassinated
and create all the progress that he did if he was not smart enough to be persuasive as well?
No, he was persuasive.
He was a genius.
He was a radical revolutionary.
He did it all. He was a 5-tool player, like persuasive and analytical. And you can't just keep telling people, read the facts, read this, read. They're not, like, a lot of times people aren't going to. You have to persuade them. There needs sugar with the medicine.
But what we've done, though, is, and this is why I disagree with you, Eddie, what we've done is we've only given America the I Have a Dream part because that's the hand-holding part.
Yes.
See, that's the equivalent of listening to a sermon and you cheering, but you skip the scripture.
But I'm not telling you to skip the rest. I'm telling you to Trojan horse people.
But I want them to read the whole thing.
You ever gone fishing without something on the hook?
I hate fishing. Damn it, I'm going to the supermarket to buy some catfish. Blend, what's up?
Hey, my name is Svi, and I was curious what the panel...
Spell that.
TSVI.
I would have never got that.
Sweet. I've seen your graffiti around town.
Oh, yeah, it's my tag. So my question was about protests on college campuses being shut down.
Oh, yeah.
Not just, speakers being shut down because of protests. Not just like people asking good questions at the end or making a little noise at the beginning but then letting the person speak. I'm talking about fully shutting down speakers like at Middlebury or Berkeley. And I was just curious what like I understand it's a very nuanced, complicated issue, but I was curious.
It's not complicated at all.
Thanks a lot.
This is not complicated at all. This is an incredible erosion of what should be a serious freedom of speech on the campuses. I think it's outrageous that students do that, because the whole key here, and the thing that we've been talking about all this session, is about the conversation that we have to have on tough topics where there's real serious disagreement. And hearing the other side is the important part of all that. So I think it's outrageous that the campuses have been, forced to do this.
Stupid and asinine, that's what it is. No, it is. Because what happens when someone else wants to shut down a speaker you like?
Which is happening right now with Linda Sarsour. So Linda Sarsour is the commencement speaker at CUNY, and the right wing has taken it up to try and shut her down because she's a Muslim woman, and they claim a lot of things, and I know Linda personally very well, that are completely not true. So there are protests, there's an online campaign against her, and that is someone that we want speaking, and that is someone that I believe in what she's saying. So I agree that it's not a difficult question. Speakers should be allowed to speak.
Final comment, the one thing you want people leaving here with, moving forward, 30 seconds, go.
Just challenge your own ideas. And also, read beyond the I Have a Dream speech. I'm really glad you actually brought that up, because MLK Day comes and everyone shares the exact same quotes of him being this pacifist, we just need to unite. No, before he even got to that dude, and even as his politics went further, he got even more radical. So for all the historical figures you hear about, Rosa Parks sitting on the bus, read deeper about these same bobbleheads that you keep seeing in social media as buttons, and realize what they were saying back then, because I feel like there's something we need to learn from them. There's a lot of things.
I want to challenge everyone here and listening to have a conversation that makes your heart pound, that makes your palms sweaty, and do that and be okay in that feeling of uncomfortability, and knowing that when you get to the other side, whatever that conversation is about, that you're going to be okay. And during that conversation, and this is the most important thing, is that you have to listen to understand, not listen to be right. And so do that this week. Go have that conversation.
Eddie?
Despite all the stupidity I see on an everyday basis, I'm bullish on humanity, and I do think that it's going to get better.
Yes.
For the Google people that are here, take the unconscious bias test. If you haven't already, you will be shocked to discover that you have them. Wow. You just don't know that yet.
I created this hashtag just playing around called Team Whip That Ass.
Why is Roland like this?
No, I did. Team Whip, WHIP, DAT, DATASS. Y'all think I'm lying. Look it up. Every day I wake up ready to do battle. Every day I have breath, I believe that I could flip somebody on a given issue. I don't shy from a fight. I don't back down from a battle. I'll debate you. It might be rough, it might be soft, it might be easy, it might be hand-holding, or I might have to whip your ass. But that really is the attitude that I have, because if people of conscience take a day off and run from the fight, then ignorance always wins. And the last thing is, I'm never going to let somebody else know more information than I do. So I'm going to read as much as I can, so when they lie, I can bust them every single time. Thanks a bunch, y'all. Give it up for our panel.
Thanks, Roland.